You guys, my voice, I shouldn't be doing a video, but we have to talk about something. And so I'm going to ask you to overlook whatever virus is attacking my vocal cords. That's why I can't use my regular microphone. I have to have the little baby up close to my throat so I don't blow my vocal cords out. But we have to get on this because this weekend, football star Zach Wilson tied the knot in a lavish ceremony with the stunning Nicolette Delano, who is a literal Barbie bride. The engagement already had this huge buzz because, let's be honest, we all love watching hot people fall in love, don't we? Zach is adorable with his baby face and the all American vibe, and Nicolette, straight up runway material. Now, she is a fashion designer and she's done some modeling. She is just so pretty. She could just get paid for being pretty. So people have been watching the Instagram of the engagement and the bridal party and everything leading up to this. And there was already just a lot of buzz because of Zach and Nicolette. And then in the middle of all this, something big happened that made worlds collide. And I have people all over the place sending me questions about this. Mormon and ex-Mormon Instagram was nearly combusting. Here's what happened. All of a sudden in the middle of the wedding, Princess Hannah and Prince Daniel over at Ballerina Farm popped up in the wedding stories. And people were like, wait, what? I haven't seen this much shock in the Mormon world since Lucky Blue and Nara wandered into Hannah's kitchen like it was just any Tuesday. So people are wanting to know what is going on here. Today, I'm connecting the dots for you. We're going full royal genealogy. I've got the pedigree chart right up here in my head, and I'm going to answer the burning question, how do all these dots connect? And why are so many Mormons rich as hell? So let's talk about Mormon royalty.
Ready on the set? Let's try this again.
I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two.
You watch these Mormon influencers, and people are like, oh, I wish that I had all the time in the world to bake the sourdough bread and chase all of the 8 kids and all this stuff. All I can think to myself as a former Mormon and still in so many ways a beneficiary of extreme privilege. And by the way, this is all one house. I would estimate this thing is maybe about 50,000 square feet. When people watch these Mormon influencers, and it looks like they're just living in small town America, and it looks like they're just scraping by and struggling to make ends meet like the rest of it, it just makes me want to scream because I've spent my whole entire life in the middle of it all. Look, that one over there is even bigger than this one. And I know what's behind the camera. I know that there is a lot of privilege that has contributed to the life that these people are living. How do young 30-somethings even afford this lifestyle? Mormon privilege. David Neeleman had all the tools that he needed to create wealth.
Okay, that was a fun little video from last summer when Kevin and I went to see my grandbaby in Park City, Utah. Our family cabin is just about 15 minutes away from Ballerina Farm. So I drove around during this video of my drive down Ballerina Farm's street and past the dairy and waving at Hannah and Daniel. So we'll get to all this Mormon privilege in a minute. But first, let's start where the Insta worlds collided. Why was Ballerina Farm at Zach Wilson's wedding? It all begins right here with Dutch immigrant John Neeleman, a first-generation Mormon whose family were Dutch immigrants and brand new converts to the church. John Neeleman owned a little corner store in downtown Salt Lake City called the Miniature Market. He was basically the godfather of convenience marts. Before 7-Eleven was a thing, he just had this tiny little store that had everything. And if his customers came in and they wanted something and he didn't have it, he'd be like, hold on a minute. And he'd just run out to somebody else's store and bring back the donuts or the coffee or whatever he didn't have. And so he pioneered that. John's son then was Gary John Neeleman. And he carried that ambition that he had learned in his parents' corner store in Salt Lake City into journalism. After serving a 2-year and 9-month Mormon mission to Brazil, which was longer than your average Mormon mission. Missionaries today go out for 2 years for the guys, 18 months for the girls. So almost 3 years, like that's a really long time. And he had to take a ship to get down to Brazil. Like, he left New York and it took him like weeks to get there. So crazy adventures back then. I don't know. When did he go on his mission? So he serves this mission and then he returns home to marry his girlfriend, Rose, who had waited for him that whole entire time. And together they pack up their baby and they move back to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where Gary became a Portuguese-speaking correspondent. He went into journalism right away after his mission, worked for Deseret News and KSL for a little while, and then because of his mission skills, because he spoke fluent Portuguese, he was like one of the only gringos down there that could speak Portuguese. Fun fact about Gary here, he was the last journalist to ever interview Fidel Castro. Gary and Rose had several kids down there in Brazil, and this is where the web starts. So their son, David Neeleman, born in Brazil, and then also served his mission there. And then David would go on to found JetBlue, Azul Air later on, which is a Brazilian company. And that Brazilian company, by the way, is made possible by his dual citizenship because he was born there. He has dual citizenship. You cannot own an airline in Brazil unless you are a Brazilian citizen. So that citizenship made that possible. And he now has Breeze Airways and a bunch of stuff. People have called him the Steve Jobs of the airline industry. So David married Vicky, and together they had 10 kids. One of those kids is hog-fathering Daniel, aka Mr. Ballerina Farm himself. Daniel and his ballerina wife, Hannah, spent the first 7 years of their marriage in Brazil, where he worked at one of David's startups and she taught ballet. That's actually where they made the money that they needed to buy the farm. That's also where they got to be interested in cattle farming, ranching, because on the weekends, Hannah, in her little blog that she wrote as a newlywed when she was influencing before she was really an influencer, called We Took the Train, which is still up today, talks about how on the weekends they would go out and look at cattle farms and just dream about coming back to America and doing exactly what they've done with Ballerina Farm. So when they did return to the States, the Neeleman family purchased the $2.97 million Ballerina Farm property outside of Park City, Utah. And around the time of that purchase, a business journal reported Daniel's annual salary of $450,000 annually, and his net worth, according to the magazine, was $6 million. So these were not like poor little Oklahoma kids who just happened to like have this little family home that they inherited. They came back to America after working for David's startup with a chunk of wealth themselves. You don't buy that Aga stove and do all of the remodeling that they did on their home without a great amount of money. So Daniel inherited this intergenerational wealth from his dad, the Steve Jobs of the airlines. Okay, now back to Gary. Gary had several children while him and Rose were down in Brazil. David was born down there, and Lisa Neeleman was born down there. So that's David's sister. She's better known as Zach Wilson's mom. Yes, the one dubbed Zach's hot mom when he got drafted to the NFL. She actually caused quite a stir. There were journalists during the draft that said the real story this year is Zach Wilson's hot mom. Hashtag is she single. She was like the ultimate NFL MILF. She's also a micro-influencer Mormon mommy. She's also a micro-Mormon mommy influencer. She does recipes. She has like some of her own merch and stuff. I think she has about 200,000 followers. I'll post her Instagram in the description. She grew up working in her grandpa's miniature markets. And she actually owns at least one, and I don't know, online it looks like she might own 2 miniature markets in Salt Lake City today. So they do that full time. I have actually had firsthand correspondence back and forth in my DMs with Lisa about a year ago. So if you're tracking the branches here in our Mormon royalty family tree, Lisa is hogfathering Daniel's aunt, David Neeleman Airlines' sister. So that makes Zach and hogfathering Daniel cousins, first cousins. And that makes Hannah Ballerina Farm and Zach first cousins, which is why they were at the wedding. Okay, and then to top it off, Nicolette, Zach's new bride, she looks just like Lisa, and that's a lot of the controversy. I have to say that I was laying in bed like in the middle of the night looking through the Instagram stories, and I didn't have my reading glasses, my grandma glasses on, So I had a hard time telling who was Lisa in the photos and who was Nicolette, and then who was just some other random blonde Neeleman that was in the photos, because they all kind of look the same. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I think that Zach definitely married his mommy. Like, they could be like twins, just a couple decades apart. It's kind of giving me like an Oedipus Rex in Dior type of vibe, but sorry, too far. By the way, the Neeleman family is Mormon, and Zach played for BYU. He has been an active Mormon by most reports for many years. I don't know what his religious status is the past couple of years. Who knows? No, none of us know. If somebody lives in Zach's ward or knows him personally, reach out and let us know. Is he over on the ex-Mormon side? Because I'd be happy to hear that. I'm always thrilled when another ex-angel gets their wings. That's a really important point. Nicolette is not Mormon. She's a wealthy Catholic girl. And if you're interested in that rabbit hole, let me know in the comments, because I'm happy to do a separate video on Nicolette and her family background and how they came to be getting married in that beautiful St. Patrick's Cathedral. So that was a really unique thing too, to see this big Mormon family going to a wedding in a Catholic cathedral rather than the Mormon temple. And again, it made my little ex-Mormon heart warm to see that. So literally, I'm going to listen to this back and hate my voice, but I do not want to wait a few days until my voice is better to dive into this, because this wedding is fresh and I've been dying for like 3 days to talk about this. Okay, now let's finish off this family tree. David and Vicky Neeleman had lots of other kids. They are all rich AF. In fact, this is the family home that hogfathering Daniel spent the last couple of years of his childhood in. It's like a gajillion square feet. It has like 5 living rooms and 20 bedrooms and a million bathrooms. I don't know. Anyway, they had 10 kids. Across the board, they're all successful as hell. There's brain surgeons, health insurance company owners, and of course, a whole Ballerina Farm cattle ranch empire, among other things. So Daniel, hogfathering Daniel, David's son, has a sister named Cecilia Neeleman, and she is behind Cecilia, New York. She is a designer who designed the Ballerina Farm cowgirl boot. Before starting her own line, she worked for Giorgio Armani, Diane von Furstenberg, and yes, her daddy's JetBlue, where she brought like some flair to the company. She was really focused on design and branding there. So there you have it. Ballerina Farm at St. Patrick's Cathedral for Zach Wilson's wedding. It all checks out. This is the Mormon royal family. And even as an ex-Mormon girly who's been around these people in real life, it was kind of fun to see them all together and just see the money flowing wildly in front of the camera, which is where I want to go for the rest of this video. Hopefully before my vocal cords just die on me. I want to zoom out and try to answer the question, why are so many Mormons so rich? Because it is not just luck. There are a higher amount of millionaires that are Mormon than non-Mormon, and the Mormon church is not even that big, but it's powerful. And Mormonism itself is a powerful tool for privilege that not a lot of other people have. So it's not just luck that there are so many rich people like the Neelemans and, Cecilia, New York, and Zach Wilson and Lisa Wilson and all of these people coming together in one family. There's a formula to it. It's Mormon privilege. And I'm going to break this down for you. By the way, I come from Mormon privilege. I've seen it firsthand. I've been in these rich communities and I know this in and out, like literally the back of my hand. I'm going to break down how Mormonism created a funnel of advantage rooted in pioneer grit, institutional loyalty, and a whole lot of real estate. And I'm going to do it in this sexy, raspy voice for you. So here we go. Let's count the ways. Number 1, work ethic culture. Mormonism doesn't just preach spiritual labor, like, working on your relationship with Jesus. It preaches literal labor. From the beginning, Mormon doctrine emphasized Zionism, the literal gathering and building of Zion. And that meant physical work. They had to survive. They were surviving harsh frontiers, gathering in Utah from all over the world and singing hymns like Today While the Sun Shines, Work with the Will. That early hardship became a cultural identity. Hard work equals wealth, equals multi-generational success. Number 2, the Mormon mission and priesthood leadership opportunities that nobody else gets. Like in other Christian churches, I became a Christian for 4.5 years after Mormonism, and you decide to go to pastor school, or you decide that you want to work in the youth ministry, and you kind of like go there. In Mormonism, all men have some type of leadership opportunity at some point, and all men are commanded to go on missions. And then there's things like scout camp and stuff like that. And just having the lay people be part of that leadership opportunity then leads to leadership opportunities in the real world. But especially that mission, I want to focus on for a second. I call it the hustle boot camp. So imagine sending your 18-year-old son out to wake up at 6:30 every single day, knock doors, sell eternal salvation in a foreign language in which he's fluent, and be accountable for and log every hour. That's a Mormon mission. It builds grit, sales skill, language fluency, discipline, and yes, resume points. Like the CIA, the FBI, all kinds of different solar panel companies and pest control companies, everyone wants to hire those Mormon missionaries when they come back because of their success. In fact, David Neeleman accounts his Mormon mission for all of his success later in life. He says that everything that he learned that led to him being the Steve Jobs of the airline industry, he learned on his mission to Brazil. Yeah, he says it set him up for success. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this, I highly recommend the book, The Mormon Way of Doing Business, which features a foreword by Mitt Romney that dives into several successful Mormon entrepreneurs, of which David Neeleman is one of them. It's great, and it's a much deeper dive into the things that I'm talking about. Number 3 is in-group loyalty. Mormons hire Mormons. I went to a Mormon dentist. I saw a Mormon OBGYN. I only trusted Mormon teachers with my kids. My landscapers were Mormons. Everybody was Mormon. I would stay at the Marriott over like the Holiday Inn or the Hilton just because it's Mormon. Mormons are so loyal to their brand. It's like a country club without walls. I say that all the time. You don't need status, just shared doctrine. You see that BYU hat, you see the garment line, and that's like your golden ticket into that person's network. In fact, when I left the Mormon church, my doTERRA business collapsed, my windshield business collapsed, my life collapsed because I was no longer part of the network, and so nobody would use me. I had to actually learn how to advertise, market, and sell stuff without just being sister grade. Okay, number 4, land ownership and intergenerational wealth. You guys, I think my vocal cords have just a little bit more in them. We're going to power through this. Back in 1847, America started handing out land via homesteading acts across Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. In fact, there were over 500 settlements that popped up across those states with free land. Free land. That is the bedrock of intergenerational wealth right there. And that land is now real estate gold. Some of my richest Mormon friends and family, they literally, like, that's why they're so rich, because their great-great-grandma had this big parcel and then they subdivided, sold it, like sold the strawberry farm, got rich, passed it on to the kids. Generational wealth starts with land ownership. And we had a group of people who migrated en masse to Utah, Idaho, Arizona, some of these other states, and they all had land, which benefited the entire community. Okay, I took a little water break. Now I'm back. Number 5, stay-at-home moms / success coaches. Mormon moms are not just homemakers. They are unpaid executive assistants for the entire family. I was a Mormon stay-at-home mom. I drove my kids to music, sports, helped with homework, packed the meals, managed the schedules, and I did all of that stuff for my husband too. I was his unpaid personal assistant. One of my kids, my oldest son, plays 13 different instruments. He did musical theater. He was like the star of every play. He was also the captain of his cross-country team. He played soccer and football and all this stuff because I had the time and the ability and the focus to make sure that he was successful. Like, I was literally his personal assistant. I was a personal assistant to all of my children. That level of support is privilege, and it creates successful kids. In fact, studies show that when you have a stay-at-home mom at home that has the resources and the ability to care for the kids well, that those kids will be more successful. Unfortunately, most of us don't have those resources, so the stay-at-home mom life actually turns into a negative. At this point, I sound so raspy that I'm considering AI voiceovering this entire thing, so I'll keep you posted. And if I do that, I'll choose like something really sexy with an accent because, I never get that. Number 6, cheap education. Mormons have access to this whole entire like religious college system in the BYUs. And it is wildly affordable thanks to tithing subsidies. So my family paid tithing. I went to BYU for a greatly reduced discount. My education, which did nothing for me because I just became a stay-at-home mom and I only had a 2-year associate's degree, was dirt cheap. And a lot of members of the church take advantage of that. Even Mormons who stop believing still go. Like I've had some nieces and nephews who are ex-Mormons who don't believe in the church anymore, but they fake it so that they can go to BYU just so they can like become dentists for a really affordable price. And then to kind of go along with that cheap education is number 7, which is Mormonism has a built-in skill-building culture. Boy Scouts, Young Women's Relief Society. Where else do human beings learn how to canoe, sew a dress, give a public speech, bake bread, make a PowerPoint? I learned massage therapy. I learned how to do my nails. I learned photography. I learned so many skills within the Mormon culture because every Wednesday night you have youth group and you're not learning about Jesus. You're learning skills. The Mormon church is such a pursuit of excellence type of culture. And in fact, that's the Adult Female Relief Society's goal setting. What do they call it? It's like a program. It's called the Pursuit of Excellence. I went through it twice as an adult. And every time I went through it, I was like learning how to play the violin, learning how to care for chickens, learning how to crochet. Anyway, it's just hard baked into Mormonism. And all of those skills lead to success. Everything that I've done in life as an adult, I learned as a Mormon growing up or from Mormons as an adult. And that also leads to all of us Mormon girlies being influencers because we have all of these weird ass skills. Like I'm going to go in here, I'm going to make some homemade cinnamon rolls out of my fresh ground wheat after I get done filming this video. And then I'm going to mix up my water kefir and I'm going to do some art later today. And I'm writing, like I do all these things that I learned as a Mormon. I know of no other culture in the world that has this pursuit of excellence and this skill building culture. I do wish that the Mormon church had taught me some skills that would have led to me making money and not just taking care of a husband and making cinnamon rolls. But number 8, doctrine that promotes stability. There's no smoking, no drinking. There was no alcoholics in the Mormon church. Nobody's spending any money on marijuana. You'll get excommunicated. You're commanded not to be in debt. I never had a credit card until I left the Mormon church 6.5 years ago. Was my very first ever credit card. We paid off our houses. There's no debt. It's a culture where the prophet teaches you that to have debt is like a sin against Jesus. And that really leads to a lot of financial solvency. Mormonism promotes clean living, financial responsibility, and just wholesome family values. Again, with the stay-at-home mom and all of the kids that help contribute to the businesses and different things like that. It creates this beautiful stability, which leads to success. And then that becomes this perpetuating cycle because then you have the success and then you pour that into 8 kids on Ballerina Farm and the work ethic and the things that they've learned from their Mormon community and the next generation. It just gets more and more successful. Okay, the very last point that I think leads to Mormon wealth is the internal welfare system. So if a family in the Mormon church falls on hard times, the church steps in. You don't get food stamps, groceries, rent. There's an LDS employment center, which is crap. Like I tried to use it one time and it was the worst thing in the world, but I mean, it exists. And then like your network is there too. And they're all provided by the local ward. That means fewer gaps and faster recovery. And I would have never been homeless and gone through all the things that I went through had I not left the Mormon church 2 weeks prior to my cheating jerk of an ex-husband, Jake, leaving our 24-year marriage, because the Mormon church would have provided that safety net for me. Just before my marriage ended and before I left the church, I took this totally free, like 12-week business management entrepreneurial class where I got a business certification from the BYU College of Business, and that class taught me all of the skills that I needed to run my furniture flipping business and all this stuff, and it's completely free. All I did is show up at the church on Tuesday nights. I don't know if I need like a heating pad or a cooling pad or what needs to happen to my throat, but that's going to happen in approximately 1 to 2 minutes according to my script. So When we talk about Mormon royalty, it's not just a cute nickname for Hannah and Daniel. It is a real system. It's a system built on missionary discipline, land acquisition, family support, and a deep, loyal network of faith-based privilege. And I'm not saying that every Mormon is rich. My family was actually poverty-stricken because of the Mormon church, but we didn't have intergenerational wealth. My dad was a first-generation convert. He was a little bit of an outlier and an outsider, so people didn't have any type of brand loyalty to him. And the excessive amount of kids, they were over capacity in their parenting, led to, like, we were so poor that we didn't always have electricity and food, which is why I'm still traumatized to this day by my childhood poverty. So I'm not saying that every Mormon is rich, far from it. But when you line up all of these advantages, it makes sense why certain families rise to the top in ways that people outside of the Mormon church certainly wouldn't have access to. So next time you see Ballerina Farm baking sourdough in a $600 Free People sundress and her Cecilia of New York Cowboy Boots, or Zach Wilson throwing a touchdown while his mom turns heads in the stands, just know this is not random. It's royalty, Mormon royalty. All right, that's it. I will be hanging out in the comments on this one to hear any questions and hear your thoughts on everything. Once again, I am Jenny from Life Take Two. Those super chats are turned on for a reason. I'm trying to put braces on Brody, amongst other things. I am a baby channel, and every little bit certainly helps me make more content like this. Please like, subscribe, again, leave a comment, and let me know if you want that deep dive on Nicolette's family. I do have a video already scripted and in production for Hannah's side of the family. So that's coming up next, Princess Hannah. And as always, thanks for being here for my second act. Bye, guys.